Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Joining us this morning on the program, always a pleasure to visit with the senior senator from the great state of Texas, Senator John Cornyn. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Chad. Good to be with you.
Always glad to have you on the program, and there's always something going on, Senator. There's always some news out there. And
I noticed that.
Yeah, I bet you did. I guess I'll just come out real flatly here. What are your thoughts on this impeachment inquiry launched by House Democrats?
Well, there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical here. Trying to impeach a president would be the fourth time in American history, 13 months before the election. And it strikes me as a desperate act because obviously after the Mueller investigation ended up with no obstruction, no collusion, the mainstream media had pretty much bought into all of that. They were dismayed, to be sure, that they weren't able to take the president out then, and now this pops up. And it seems to me to be pretty thin stuff, pretty thin gruel. And then, of course, to add to that, the fact that this alleged whistleblower didn't even hear the conversation that they reported. So it's secondhand information. You wonder who they did talk to, who perhaps even leaked classified information in the process. And then count me a little skeptical when they run into the welcoming arms of a former Chuck Schumer staffer and a Hillary supporter as their lawyer. So there's just a lot of questions I have about this whole process. And, there's no handbook for all this, Chad, but I would say there is a rule book, and that's the Constitution.
Yeah.
The presumption of innocence, the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses, and so it'll be fascinating to see this play out.
Can you be a whistleblower if you don't have firsthand knowledge of the information?
I don't see how that's possible. There's as you may have seen on social media, there was some change in the intelligence community's policy with regard to reporting alleged whistleblowers, but and didn't require firsthand knowledge. But that strikes me as pretty bizarre, because how can you judge the credibility of something that somebody reports that is something they heard and not heard about from others, and that doesn't have firsthand knowledge? So it's a very strange posture, to be sure.
Yeah, visiting with Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show. Have you seen anything at all? And I know it's fairly early on in this whole process, but have you seen anything at all that even warrants an investigation, or is this politics? Is just this politics being played by House Democrats?
Well, the Mueller investigation is a law enforcement investigation to see if there was any basis to charge a crime. Impeachment is very different, as you know. It's a political process because it requires a vote of the House for articles of impeachment, and then the Senate sits as a jury, and 2/3 of the Senate has to vote for or against removal of a president. So this is an extraordinary process. And it strikes me that this is right now. It seems like a continuation of the effort by those who never have accepted the fact that President Trump won the election in the first place.
Yeah. Yesterday, the New York Times, they came out with this, and I was visiting with Matt Mackowiak earlier, Republican strategist, Senator Cornyn, and he and I agree that this all seems like a very coordinated attack and leak operation that we're seeing. And then last night, I guess the New York Times came out with their big quote-unquote bombshell, which is the Attorney General, after saying months ago that he would investigate the investigation of the 2016 election. Now the New York Times is saying the Attorney General is reaching out to foreign nations, and they're not happy about this, or that the New York Times is making this out to be something that is a bad thing. the DOJ is saying, yeah, he's reached out and the president's reached out to help this investigation go along. Have you seen anything that's wrong with the Attorney General reaching out to foreign nations?
That's his job, Chad. And
that's what I thought, too.
And the New York Times is, really given up any pretense of objectivity. They've really just become a partisan rag, and it saddens me to say that. We need some independent journalism in America where people get the facts and not just a steady stream of opinion pieces or partisan attacks. So, yeah, it's interesting. They're obviously trying to preempt this revelations from the Inspector General report that Barr and the Inspector General of the Department of Justice are going to roll out about the counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign prompted by Andrew McCabe and the FBI, and Director Comey, who, of course, said that he consciously leaked information so that a special counsel would be appointed, which it was, and which, of course, lasted a couple of years with millions of dollars spent, hundreds of subpoenas issued, numerous witnesses talked to, and ended up with no charges. So this is a bizarre time we're living through, to be sure.
Yeah, well, that is one way to put it, absolutely. And I've got to one more question on impeachment. Then I want to get to a roundtable that you were part of yesterday. How do you think this will impact this impeachment circus that is out there right now from the Democrats? How do you think that'll impact the upcoming election in 2020?
Well, I think it's nobody really knows. This is going to be a high risk gamble by Nancy Pelosi to start this again 13 months before the election. Why they didn't decide just to try to beat the president in 2020, but apparently they're losing confidence that they can actually do that, because it looks to me like Elizabeth Warren is likely to be the nominee and Joe Biden is going to fade. But I think this could well boomerang on them. Yeah. And it may just look to the American people like a continuation of this resistance to a Trump presidency, even after he was duly elected in 2016. And if the Democrats put up somebody like Elizabeth Warren, a truly radical candidate, I think that bodes well for the president's reelection.
Senator, you were in Midland yesterday at a roundtable. Talk about that.
Well, I've been concerned, Chad, that about access to mental health care in Texas and around the country. There's some legal challenges with, for example, if you have an adult child, like the shooter in Odessa, his mother 8 years ago, the Amarillo police reported that they responded to a call from her, worried about him not taking his medication and that he was a threat to himself and potentially others. So families and communities need more tools and more capacity to deal with people who obviously are demonstrating mental health problems, so they're not a danger to themselves and others. But this is even broader than just incidents like that. This is trying to help people lead productive lives by getting them the mental health services they need. So we were talking specifically about Texas Tech and their telehealth program. In places like West Texas, as you know, big wide open spaces, there's not as many professionals as are needed to deal with the demands of the public. And so telehealth is one way to do it, and that's what we were featuring yesterday in Midland.
Very good. Before I let you go, President Trump's going to hold a rally in Dallas on October 17th. Will you be there?
I plan on being there. Yep. It's he loves those rallies, and the last one I went to was with Prime Minister Modi in Houston, which was quite a show. So I expect a lot of enthusiastic supporters of the president there, and probably maybe not an equally large group of protesters, but it'll be quite a show.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. Senator, as always, we appreciate your time, and we'll visit with you later on.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you. That's Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO.